This is Joe,
Michelle,
Melissa,
and Shannon,
with More Than a Sniff, where we talk about everything dog.
from training to nutrition,
from behavior modification to grooming,
from vet visits to dog parks.
From getting to know us to having guests. Today we're going to talk about... So we're still on our conceivability last pillar of dog training, and I had a lesson today with a couple that they have a really, really, really hard time. Like they can see what the end goal is, or not is, but they have like a picture that they have in their head. But what they can't seem to understand is that they need to follow the process and believe in the process, and trust the process that it works instead of getting, but no, we need to teach him this. And I think that that's what people have a hard time with overall as far as training versus teaching. And also, how do you teach a dog to stay in the yard and to not run after the kids every time he sees somebody? And that every time somebody comes into the house that he runs over and he literally is like scratching them to death. And so that's what I'd like to talk about is how would you, as I'm putting quotes up, teach a dog to not do that? And it's really difficult for them to I know, I understand what you're saying, but we need to teach him not to do that. So we're going to talk in the podcast of teaching not to do that. Because it's just not something that it's very abstract on it. So, Michelle, what's your thoughts?
So are we talking when you say staying in the yard stuff, are we talking that versus training when you're saying we teach them to lay down, right? But we're talking more of the big picture of this is what we're doing to live with the dog.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yep. Yep.
Got it. I'm just trying to follow a little bit here, but yep. Okay.
Yeah. So people get in their head that you teach a dog to not run off.
Right. Instead of teaching the dog not really even teaching the dog to connect to you, but getting that connection with the dog versus this is a solid recall. Is that what? Okay.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I told him we don't need a recall.
Right.
That's not what it is. So, because the dog's already there, got to the person, scratched him up, scared the little kids, whatever. He's just a little 15-pound doodle, but yeah, so he wants a recall, which we will teach it, but that's not a recall situation. So talk to me about what your thoughts would be if that was the case.
It's kind of funny because I feel like I'm right in that perfect spot of exactly what we're talking about right now, because Siggy's right at that perfect age. I've started using targeting with her to teach her recall, but in all reality, that recall to me, it really is not actually that I'm teaching her to come. I mean, I am, right? And in emergency situations, they need to know what that means and stuff.
Yep.
But the overall picture for her is Siggy's so different than the rest of my dogs. She loves everybody and everything. Where the rest of my dogs, this was not even, it wasn't a thought process we had, because none of them wanted anything to do with anybody else. I mean, Prudence likes people. But really she wants to say hi and then she wants to leave. So she's never had that problem of oh my gosh, I'm so excited and I want to jump all over you and I've got sharp little teeth and where Siggy does bad. But it's not really about me teaching her not to do it, or even that recall. I mean, sometimes that recall might come into place in this.
Sure.
But in all everything that we are working on is just her learning to relax in those moments. So it's not even really that I'm giving it a command or teaching anything. It's more about slowly introducing her to stuff and letting her become accustomed to there being 100 people around and stuff, instead of just throwing her in those situations because she loves people. Great. But so I think it's more about living with your dog. But I can see how that's really hard for people.
So,
because it's really hard for me, honestly, because all my other dogs, it really is just something they've always, especially Murphy. I never had to teach Murphy a recall. I don't ever remember actually teaching Murphy a recall. he will come when you say his name, but I don't remember there ever being that, like, breakdown of, like, here. You know what I mean? Rambo a little bit more because he doesn't really run away from me, but he will give you the bird sometimes.
Yeah.
He'll just be like, I'm not coming back.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's a lot more about connection piece right now with her when it comes to this kind of stuff. Being attached to me all the time.
Yeah.
Doing long line work where we're just, like, walking around the yard. Just sitting and, like, just hanging out in the front yard where it's not as overstimulating. All those little things like that.
Yeah.
So there's, I mean, and I still feel like those are teaching moments, and I still consider those training moments. But it's not, there's no command to it.
Yeah. Yeah. Melissa?
You can't teach life.
Right.
You can't. I mean, there are people walking by, there are so many different variables. There are different smells, there's different people, there's different energy, there's different bleh, and you can't teach how to live life. Just like I can't go to you and go, I'm going to teach you, Joe, how to live my life.
Right.
I can teach steps and you can teach processes of, oh, when this happens, you do this. So, like, there are things that you can do, like letting them in the front yard on a line that doesn't go to the sidewalk. When they see that, you reel them in, have them ring a bell. You can do stuff like that creates an automatic response. But what all of those do, like, yeah, oh, I can teach my dog to, when they see somebody, they go and ring a bell. Like, yeah, that's cute. But what you're teaching is that they don't always have to do that. And what I think what really happens is that we no longer have so much energy. And when we see those people coming, that we go, oh, crap.
Yeah.
Or this all happened, which makes it much bigger deal. But, oh, this is what we're going to do instead, which it's less of what you're teaching the dog, but more of what you're showing the dog. That this is how we live our life. This is what happens, and that there's a plan of action. So different things that you can do, like sit out in front yard with them, and then put them back in the house if they react, having them out on a line. Those are all things that you can teach, but they build into, when you're consistent with them, a life that you show the dog, that you have to learn with the dog. And if I may be a little stingy about it, but, like, if we're not willing to do those steps, why should our dog be willing to not do that?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I think it just goes all back to you have to keep that routine and get that structure of, oh, this is the expectation we have. You kind of can teach expectation. You can show expectation. But in real life situations, it's consistency, routine, and you being there with your dog and showing up for them.
Yeah. I think consistency is a big piece there too, as I'm thinking about this. Like, I mean, a lot of the stuff we're doing with Siggy is more correction than teaching when it comes to this negative stuff we don't like. So it is going to be, even if it is just putting them in the house, or so it's more of a correction than it is like a teaching piece. But I think the consistency is where people lose it on this one, because I think it's cute she jumps on me. I do. I think it's absolutely adorable, but a 2-year-old's not going to think that. You know what I mean? Like, and that's really, really hard. And she will probably always be a jumper because, like, on you because it doesn't bother me, and she's only going to weigh 25 pounds. Not that that's an excuse. But I think that's where people lose it in this, is that those moments are really more about correcting than teaching the negative behaviors.
Shannon?
I think that people have connected in their mind that teaching the dog to do something is equal to telling it what to do all the time. Verbally telling it what to do. And living with your dog and teaching the dog to live with you and be part of your life is not you physically, verbally telling them what to do all the time. You're teaching them what the expectation is of how they live in your house and how they live with you. And I think that's why it's so hard for people to understand, because all of the culture of popular dog training that people know about is that you go up to a class and someone teaches you how to command your dog to do what's expected. And that's the opposite, really, of what they want. Because they don't want to tell the dog what to do all the time. And that's where we get a disconnection of that they don't know how to handle things that they don't want their dog to do. Because they think they should command the dog what not to do, and they shouldn't.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's why we're so weird, I guess.
Right.
Why we do this is because we live with our dog every day.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we teach people how to live with their dog every day. And I find it in, like, when we go on vacation.
Yeah.
And we have each other's dogs. Like, I just had Michelle's dogs this week.
Yeah.
And her dogs just come to my house and they just live in my house as part of my family.
Yeah.
And that's because they know how to live in a house with a family.
Right.
And even though they love Michelle and they're her dogs, they're trained to that expectation of knowing how to live with a person.
Yeah.
That they can come and live with me, and it's just like if I had my own dogs.
Right.
You know?
Right. Yeah.
And that's with any, because we all watch each other's dogs all the time.
Yeah.
And that they just come into your house and fit in.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And that's what people want.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why they call us and ask us to help them.
Right.
But they don't understand because it's very abstract.
Yes, very much so.
It's really, and we've got a lot of clients that it's so hard for them to break that cycle of training.
Yeah.
All the time.
Yeah.
24/7. Like that's what we're doing. So hard for them.
Yeah. Yeah. So it ended with me telling them that, you know, we're not always, and we are not responsible for connecting to our dogs in the way that you have to micromanage and tell them what to do all the time. Like, that's not our job. Our job is to make sure they have food and water and shelter and all their needs are met. And it's their responsibility to keep track of us. And in return, we give back or find joy and we have a balanced family. And so I told him, I said, well, he's like, he's great as long as nobody's around outside. And, you know, I want to be outside. I want to be in the garage. And as soon as somebody comes in, he runs off. And so their homework is that he has to be on a line of some sort so that he can't run and go say hi. Like, it's not even an option because he's getting distracted into doing something, that's life. That's kind of what you do, and your dogs just hang with you. And then the dog needs to learn to hang and find that peace and that, oh, this is what we do in the front yard. We're not out here to go run off. And so we have to have zero error. And he goes, but how do I teach him not to do that? I mean, he just really couldn't get past. And I said, a dog does not have to learn error to learn not to do it. They don't have to make error for us to discipline. If they never learn that activity, they don't ever do it as long as you put them in the front yard and do things and have expectations of what they should be doing while we're out there. But it's not always training. We're not out there training in the front yard. We have to live our life because if we stop training, what happens? They run away. It's not, you cannot constantly train in that environment and then all of a sudden stop training and expect that the dog's going to know it. No, it doesn't work like that. And that's where the traditional training that happens where we learned all this stuff and it doesn't transfer to real life because you're focused on the dog. And if we focus on the dog, guess what? The dog's pretty stinking perfect, whether you've taught it or not. And so that was the end of that I get the picture that you want. We have to create the picture that you want so that you can do you and that he will figure out that he cannot do that. And so we'll see what they do as far as this week with homework. I need him to stay. Yep, got it. He does need to stay in the yard, so let's teach him.
Yeah, there's no way you could teach that stay if you were not paying attention the entire time the dog was out there.
Right.
If you would literally have to be standing there watching him. And that's never going to happen.
Yeah.
So error is going to happen, and he's going to learn to get away with it.
Yeah. Yep. As soon as you disconnect. Yeah.
So I kind of had a flip side of this with a new client whose healer loves. They live in this apartment complex in her apartment. She loves the view, but I'm like, this is the worst view to have for a dog that wants to park at the window because it overlooks the play area, overlooks 8 different front doors that all come to this gazebo type thingy.
Wow.
And this dog just loves it.
Oh, sure.
Oh, she's just and I was like, hey, you're never on a line to you all the time. That's for all week, anytime she's out of her crate, she's on a leash too, and she called me yesterday, and she's so funny. She, Melissa, can you believe it? She has not barked at the window once. And I was like, I know. I have not had to get after her. And I was like, that's awesome. And she's like, it's been nice not having to discipline. And I was like, okay.
Yeah.
But it's just like, you're not, it's not a training. It's just.
Right. That's not your job.
I know, that's not your job. And then it's like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
She didn't get the opportunity, so she's just not doing it. So it's just been fun. Like, she had just like.
Nice.
Her mind was blown.
Yeah.
Oh, my word.
That's cool. That's cool. So my challenge would be to understand what the big picture is and understand that it's not a training situation. It's exposure and making sure that error does not happen.